So I've got the XT225 fork here, and it's old oil. It's coming out black. This bike has 4,000 miles on it, and that's usually when you do the valve check. So I'm assuming this hasn't been changed yet. I also did the fork seals on it, and this is what the oil is supposed to look like. It's supposed to be clear. I did cut 1-inch copper pipe to put on the top of the suspension, and this is before I did the work, and then this is after. I went from 10 weight fork oil up to 15 weight, and then put that 1-inch spacer in there. This is again before I did the work. I also did some modification to the rear suspension as well to match the front. Since I did go up about 1 inch in the front, I tightened the suspension in the back and went up to the tightest that I could per Yamaha specs, which is 1.8 inches, and then I also increased the dampening to 1 click from the hardest setting, and it's quite a bit stiffer on the front and the rear.
So what do I think of the suspension now that I've rode it on the street and in the dirt? It's good. I don't think I'd go back. Actually, I know I wouldn't go back. There's a lot of work to do it. It took me half an afternoon to get it put in. I like it though. Significantly improvement over the very soft suspension than it was before. I think Japan, Yamaha set it that way for people to ride on the street, because the street compliance was fantastic with the soft suspension. It absorbed everything. As for the dirt, every time I hit a bump or went off a whoop section here in the desert, I'd bottom it out constantly. Front mostly, rear sometimes. The front needed improvement. So with doing the front and making the front 1 inch taller and making it stiffer, I ramped up the rear spring as well and tightened it up and went to the highest compliance I could per Yamaha's recommendation, which is 1.8 inches spring load. And then on my damping settings, I'm just 1 click away from the toughest setting, and it's great. I love it. The front fork, I'm so glad that I didn't drop $1,000 to go the Cogent Dynamics suspension. It would have been for the front fork springs, and then also they have dampeners that go in there. And then for the rear, it would have been a totally new assembly. And I think I would have probably gotten fairly similar outcome to this. It may have been better, granted, for both road and off-road, but I'm thrilled. It's great. I can hit the whoops, I can hit jumps. I hit jump just a little bit ago and it did fine. I wasn't bottoming it out. The whoops are horrible because every time I would hit, it would go clink, 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 and it beat me up. It beat up the poor bike. I could tell the bike was struggling. I was worried about this bike being a good bike for what I like to do. So I went to the dealership to look at some other bikes. They had 2 CRF 250s. One was a 250L and the other one was an L Rally. And they kind of have the same problems. They're not big torquey motors. The suspension's soft. The other one that they had was a DRZ 400, which I liked, but there's no way I'm buying a new DRZ 400 that hasn't changed in 20 years. I might as well just buy one off the used market for $2,000 or $3,000. I sat on it. The suspension was stiffer and it had a long suspension, which helped. The other option, which I never really considered, was they had a KTM 500 EXC. That 500 EXC was beautiful. The guy that had it before was in 2017. The guy that had it before dropped a lot of money into it. It had suspension redone. It looked like the sag of the bike was a lot lower because I could touch the ground both feet. From what I understand, those bikes are pretty tall bikes. It had a concept seat on it, so the seat was super comfortable. And the other thing that I could not believe was with the bike being a 500cc, it weighed 250 pounds. I went to lift it up and I was like, oh my goodness, this thing is so light. Not even some of the 250s are that light, 4-strokes that are dual sports, like CRFs. They're way more than that. Your 400 cc's, like your DRZ 400s, they're a good 50-60 pounds heavier than that. Makes a huge difference. I can pick it up off the ground. So I was considering getting that bike, but it'd also be $9,000. This one here, bought it for about $2,000, and I've done some upgrades to it, but nothing too crazy. Nothing I would have done on the other bikes. The fork job didn't cost me that much. The fork oil is inexpensive. I paid $10 for the fork oil. Paid $20 for a copper pipe that was 2 feet long. Cut 2 pieces off that were 1 inch long. Stuck it on, and then put in the 15 weight fork oil. Stock is 10, so up the weight a little bit, and it rides great. The rear shock, I'm sorry, didn't have to do anything on that for it cost money wise. Money wise, it was just a free upgrade. Just tighten up the spring a little bit and match the front. My ground clearance, post some pictures. My ground clearance, it ended up increasing by ½ an inch, which is great. I already had really good ground clearance, but I'll take anything I can get. Ooh, look at this guy. Let's jump it. I also did the pegs. The stock pegs were not great on this thing. They were super small. So I upgraded the pegs and got these big fat pegs. Upgraded the handlebars. That's about it. Whew. No bottoming out anymore. Did fantastic. I can't complain, man. That's exactly what I was looking for. Something I could jump. Not bottom out the darn suspension. Did great. I love it. Let's try this other jump. At this point, I got a couple upgrades. The rear rack, I'm not a big fan of. It's giant, and I hit my butt on it all the time because it sticks up a couple inches above the seat, and it protrudes back. And so when I'm doing the whoops, I'm always hitting it, knocking me in the butt. So that will be upgraded.